ladies and gentlemen, and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video, it is going to be another ranking. And I am going to be ranking all 5 of the Daniel Craig James Bond movies. So with No Time to Die finally releasing in theaters after many delays, and being Daniel Craig's final outing as the iconic James Bond, what better time than now to rank all 5 of his entries as the character. Before we hop into the actual ranking, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my ranking videos. So be sure to check that out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And with all of that being said, let's hop right into things. Number 5, Quantum of Solace. I know a lot of people just outright hate this movie, but that's not really the case for me. I actually think it's half decent, and it definitely has its moments where it can be a lot of fun. But its biggest sins are its poorly shot action, and the lackluster and overall forgettable villains. You can hardly tell what's going on in any of the fight or chase sequences, which unfortunately are very frequent in this entry. Mads Mikkelsen set the bar pretty high with Le Chiffre in Casino Royale, and that makes Green and Dictator Guy feel even more generic and boring. Bond and M's relationship is very strained, and I love the dynamic between them in this one. The story in general is fine, I guess. It's kind of a generic Bond flick where the very interesting stuff takes a back seat. Mr. White and this big secret organization take a step back in favor of this sort of basic plot of overthrowing a government, and land deals to hold water supplies hostage, and under-the-table deals for oil and blah blah blah. Again, the story isn't horrible, but it just doesn't really feel all that natural either. Bond sort of just stumbles upon it and then just happens to stick with it. It's definitely the weakest entry, but it's still quite enjoyable and I like its pacing. And fun fact, Another Way to Die is actually my favorite Bond song. Number 4, Spectre. I love the Day of the Dead setting for the opening scene. It's visually pleasing, something different for the franchise, and it starts off with a oneer followed by a thrilling helicopter sequence. And this is then followed by my favorite Bond opening sequence. I don't know why, I just adore the overall design and colors they went with. My biggest issue with this movie is that tonally it feels all over the place. Sometimes it's super serious, and sometimes it's all jokey and witty. And I really didn't enjoy any of the comedy beats in this one. Followed by the fact that it is needlessly long, which leads to portions of the film feeling bloated and boring. The plot to begin with in my mind is kinda meh. To me, there was never any sort of hint that M filmed this video or knew anything at all. And it never even shows us how Bond got the video, he just sort of has it. Even the first big car chase sequence in this movie is somehow boring. The plot in general is sadly quite predictable as well. And it falls into the major sequel trope for these big franchises where the one villain for this movie says it was me all along. But thankfully, I believe Christoph Waltz was awesome enough to save the day. I also wanted to add that I love how the Bond movies up till this point adjusted with the times. Nuclear bombs or deadly viruses aren't the villain's big plans, but instead it's intelligence, surveillance, and hacking, and it works very well for these movies. The last thing I want to add is that I really don't get the love story here. It comes out of absolutely nowhere and easily feels the most forced of the franchise. Number 3, Casino Royale. Okay, before you dislike the video or start calling me an idiot or something, hear me out. I love the rest of these entries just about equally. There are just a few little nitpicks here and there that separate them. But in the end, I'd actually give them all the same rating. Because honestly, this is a near-perfect Bond movie. Firstly, Daniel Craig proves right away why he was the perfect choice to take on the iconic character. His demeanor, his swagger, his speech, everything about him head to toe screams Bond. Eva Green was also an exceptional equal to Craig. Sophisticated, layered, beautiful, and witty. She's my personal favorite of the Bond girls because she is far more than just easy on the eyes. Mads Mikkelsen is an absolute scene stealer, as he always is. The man is brilliant in everything that he's in, and this is no exception. I've always found him to be far more reserved than the traditional Bond villains. There's no big final fist fight between the two or anything. Instead, he's far more cold, calculated, and unbelievably ruthless. The film's action is magnificently shot and choreographed, especially that opening chase. The pacing is excellent. The poker game at the center of the plot is intense and unpredictable, and the direction all around from Martin Campbell is superb. The only area that falls flat for me is sadly the last act. I feel everything just sort of comes to an abrupt halt. And then we focus on this half-baked love story for like 20 minutes. Then we get our final action sequence and then boom, movie over. And that for me is why it ends up in third instead of first like most people. Number 2, No Time to Die. Is it too much for me to say that this was literally everything I could have wanted and more for Daniel Craig's final Bond entry? It kicks off with a very intense and horror-esque opening, followed by an insane balls-to-the-wall action sequence with big, thrilling stunts. The movie boasts stunning cinematography, well-shot and choreographed action, and some very, very unexpected twists and turns. I actually really liked Rami Malek as the main villain, more than most people it seems. And I really wish we got more of him and Ana de Armas, who really doesn't get as much time in the movie as you think she might. Lashana Lynch, however, was fantastic as expected. But I really hope that she doesn't keep the 007 name and instead goes on to become her own independent character that's equally as adored. The story was a bit by the numbers in general action movie blockbuster terms. But in terms of Craig's Bond movies, he's never faced a global bioweapon threat like this. And I personally found it to be quite exciting. The supporting cast across the board played their parts marvelously. Both the familiar faces and some newcomers. I left the theater satisfied and will remember Craig's Bond movies more than fondly. It tied up all of the franchise's loose ends and gave closure on every plot point. It truly felt like it was a conclusion, and it left no stone unturned. It did a magnificent job at encompassing elements from every movie that came before it. And in the end, it was a beautiful, emotional, powerful, impactful, and dare I say, perfect swan song for Craig's Bond. And number 1, Skyfall. And by a slim margin, Skyfall takes the cake as Daniel Craig's best Bond movie. It's by far the most personal Bond flick of the 5. It takes a deep dive into his past, as we explore where he came from, and have a look into his psyche, discovering his self-hatred and alcoholism, but also his determination and perseverance. It throws us right into it with an exhilarating opening action sequence that offers up a ton of variety. Javier Bardem is the best villain in my eyes by a landslide. He's intelligent, cunning, and sinister. And he was given some of the best dialogue throughout the whole franchise. Dame Judi Dench is phenomenal here as well. Easily her best performance of the franchise, and her history with our main villain adds nicely to the mix. The newcomers of MI6 like Ralph Fiennes, Naomi Harris, and Ben Whishaw are more than welcome as they add a lot to the movie and to the franchise as a whole. It's gorgeously shot, boasts beautiful colors, fantastically scored by Thomas Newman, the pacing and the story are top-notch. And despite its more personal storytelling, it still manages to feel epic in terms of scope and scale. I genuinely do not have a single flaw with this movie, and that's why it takes the number 1 spot. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my ranking. And while you're down there, feel free to let me know what ranking you'd like to see next. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching. And that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you. And while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.